guys, so back in class we talked about the parts we needed to build our wall. Our stud, our trimmers, our king studs. And now I'm going to show you how to do the actual layout on the actual plates, like you will on your project. So first thing I did is I tacked them together. The reason for that is, this way I do my layout once, I don't have to pull on both plates, I just pull it together. And then when I go to stand the wall, everything is already lined up and level. Once I plumb one end of the wall, everything's plumbed up together. I'm going to put my layout on the edge. The reason for that is when I go to separate these, then to frame it, then everything's where I'm going to see it when I go to frame it. So the first thing we're going to lay out are our openings. Now I've got my blueprints right here. The reason for doing the openings first is so that they don't move. Same thing with our corner blocks and our channels. They don't move at all. We have to keep those where they go. The studs we can float around and adjust a little bit if we need to. So I'm doing the wall here that has window 1 and window 5. Remember on your prints, everything with a hexagon and a number is a window. So window 1, I have written down from our classwork that it's a 1'6" by 2' opening. And it's centered at 3 foot 5.5 from the end of the wall. So I'm going to make a center mark first, 3 foot 5.5. I'm going to take my speed square here, make a little line across both plates and write CL for center line. So in that layout, when it says 1'6" by 2 foot, that means 1'6" is going to be our horizontal measurement. That's the one we want. So to get that, I want that centered on the center line. So I'm going to take that 1'6" and divide it by 2, which will give me 9 inches, right? Because 1'6" is 18 inches. So I'm going to go put 9 inches on my center line. I'm going to mark the end of my tape. I'm going to mark 18 inches. Then I'm going to take my friend's speed square. I'm going to make a mark on both sides of the wall. So that's the size of my opening. And next to that opening, I'm going to have a trimmer. And then next to that trimmer, I'm going to have a king stud. Remember, the trimmer holds up our header, which transfers the load from the roof down to the foot. I'm not going to pull my tape out again. I'm just going to use the measurements that are on my speed square. The little measurements right here. This little section here is 1 inch thick, and then all these marks are 1/4 inch after that. So here I have 1.5 inches, which is the thickness of my 2x4, and I also have 3 inches here. So I just put it right on there, mark 1.5 inches, 3 inches, slide over, and make the lines. And then in those spaces I've made, I'm going to mark first a T for that trimmer and then a K for the king studs. Now every company does it a little different. Some put an X, some only mark one side of the line. Guys I work for always like both sides of the line. So now I'm going to do the other window, which is window 5. And this had a slightly different opening size, different type of window from a different company. Just remember we use that chart that's on the next page. And it's centered at 2 foot 3 3/4, which is way down here. And it is 3 foot 1/2 wide. So again, I'm going to find half of 3 foot, which is 18 inches, plus half of 1/2 inch, which is 1/4. And I'm going to make a mark. And I mark 3 foot 1/2 inch. Put the tape away for a minute. Again, use my speed square. Do all those other measurements. My K marks, trimmer marks. It's almost lost my line there, but we got it now. So the reason for using my speed square is it's just a little faster. It's saving a step and not having to pull my tape out over and over again. Now on this wall, this is a through wall, right? This is on the outside, runs all the way through. The walls on the end butt into it. So down here I'm going to have a corner. And this also has 2 interior walls that intersect it. So I'm going to make a channel there. Let's do our channels first. This channel over here comes over at 5 foot 6.5. So here's 5 foot 6.5. Remember, our channel is a flat 2x4 with 2 studs on each side of it. So I'm going to square that center line across, and half of 3 1/2, which is our width of our stud. Our stud is 1 3/4. I'm just going to mark that on both sides. Oops, let's mark that in the right spot. All right. Then put a 1/2 inch on each side, and I'm just going to mark an X this time. And that'll let me know we've got 2 studs. I like to put a line in the middle so I know it's a channel. Now this one over here, this channel comes in at 7 foot. Again, I'm going to mark the center line. Sometimes I won't even put my tape in, and I'll just mark 1 3/4 each way. We just write off the tape measure. Again, it saves a step of moving everything around. Some of these things I do are my little habits that work for me, but if you can find a way that works for you where you can be consistent and accurate, that's the best. I'm giving you a starting spot, but I want you to find your own way. Now down here I need that corner block. Remember, we're going to use the stud block stud style. So I mark 1 1/2 for a stud, 1 1/2 for my blocks, and lastly 1 1/2 for the second stud. Now the reason for the stud block stud is not only does it give me nailing, and I'm going to mark that XBX, it gives me a way to nail in my butt wall, but by adding this block in here, it gives me a space to screw in my sheetrock on the inside of the wall. So now that I've got the openings and the channels in there, now I'm going to do my studs. I'm just going to hook one end, and I want it to be 16 on center. So to facilitate that, I'm going to mark the edge of my stud, my first stud, at 15 1/4. By marking 15 1/4, that puts 16 on center from my edge of my building. We always do the layout from the outside corner, which can make a little complication on these butt walls because you have to consider that you have 3 1/2 inches that's not there. So your outside measurement, you have to subtract 3 1/2 inches, or sometimes the guys will do a trick where they burn 3 1/2 inches at the end. I like to just do the math. But so now I've got my first stud. Some guys like to put a nail here, hook that nail, and then mark 16 on center. Remember, your little red marks are 16 on center. I don't like to do that. I like to just keep my tape measure hooked. Nails, I always slip off the nail. It's another way of being a little less accurate. So I just keep it hooked there, and then every red mark I go back 3/4. And I already see on this first one, that puts me right on my trimmer, so I don't need to worry about that stud. My third stud here, though, ends up right in my window. And normally I would go through and mark all the studs first and then come back and square them. But I want to talk about these little guys around the window. So I don't want a stud going through the opening, but I do need what we call cripple. And that's just a shortened stud that goes above a window or door and below a window. And I mark that C there so that way when I'm coming along putting my window parts in and my studs in the wall after I separate these plates, I know right where I know these are going to be short pieces here. Depending on the architect, sometimes you don't have top cripples, they just give you a taller header over the door or the window, and that's fine. But now I'm going to finish off my layout here. And like I said, everywhere I see a red mark, I just go 1 1/2 back. Right here I see my stud's going to overlap this king stud a little bit, so this channel a little bit. So I'm just going to put it right next to it. As I go, I like to put a mark, an X next to the line so I know which side I was putting my stud on. And just keep going all the way down. Oops, here again, it lands on my channel, so I just ignore that one. Again, it lands about half on my king stud. And this is where you get to make a little decision if you want to put it in or not. I might, just to be safe, put one in there. Make sure everybody's got enough backing for the siding, for the drywall. Find that is always best to have a little extra. Studs really aren't that expensive, so if you save the stud is cheap, if you use an extra stud or two, probably won't break the bank. So now I'm going to come back down here to my first stud I lay out. I'm just going to slide along with my square, marking on both plates where that X is. It just takes a little minute. If I forgot to make a mark for both sides of my stud, I just used my speed square like I was doing with the windows. Just slide along. Oops. Go all the way down. So I get them all laid out. Make sure you got both sides. Okay, now I've got everything laid out. A couple more things to keep in mind. Oops, these should be cripples. We're over a window. Couple things to keep in mind. It's kind of handy if you mark, say this is window 5, if I just write window 5 on the plates, then the framer who's coming behind me, he knows which parts to look for, which header, which cripples to look for. I'll mark this one window 1 when he goes to get all those parts from the cutback. So now I've laid out all my studs, and I did them coming from my right side. I'm right-handed, that works best for me. But when I go to the through wall on the other side, I want to pull from the same end of the building. Say if this is the east end, I want to make sure I start on the east end over there. That might mean if I'm on the outside, I might have to come from left to right, but that's okay. We want to keep all these studs lined up. It makes it easier for the electrician, the HVAC guy, the plumber, because they have nice straight runs for all their pipe. But it also just makes the job look neat. Everything lines up, it looks real neat. And it's even, if you really want to make a nice good framing job, you want to do that even on the interior walls, just to make sure everything lines up, make sure everything's really nice. Okay, so now, now I want you to break up into your groups. Each one of you I want to lay out a wall, and then I'll check everything, and we'll talk about it, make sure we're all on the right page, and then you can lay out the rest of the building. I'm going to come through and I'll grade you on, well, after we get the walls framed, I'll come through and grade you on if you had your centers in the right spot and if your windows are the right size and your doors are the right size. If we're off a little bit, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, our shim space will let us be a little small. Better to be bigger than smaller to make sure things fit. But ideally it will be perfect. Okay, so break into your groups and then we'll check everything in a minute.